George Bizos, advocate and senior member of the law faculty in South Africa. The obvious question I've got to ask you at this age, I mean, you're 85, 86 now,
No,
aren't you?
will be 85 in November.
85. And you're still working. Why,
Yeah.
George?
I am working for the Legal Resources Center. We don't take money from our clients. In the main, we act for individuals, but more particularly class of people who will benefit from a favorable decision in relation to their constitutional rights. I have been here since 1990. I had done from 1954 to 1990 odd numerous human rights cases, inquests on behalf of families whose people died in jail. And the Arthur Chaskelson, who passed away in December last year, founded the Legal Resources Center. I did work for it, and he became the Chief Justice. I didn't want to become a judge or a politician, even though I had offers from Mr. Mandela. I wanted to remain a lawyer. And I joined Arthur Chaskelson here. A few years ago, I had a health problem. I tendered my resignation to the LRC, who've got offices in the 4 cities, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. And one of the young women in the Constitutional Litigation Unit asked me, why do you want to retire? I said, well, you know that my memory is not so good anymore. And she flattered me by saying that, George, anything that you may have forgotten, some of us have never learned, so just stay here. I still do constitutional court cases, as you probably know. I represent some of the victims of the Marikana massacre. I never thought that at my age I would have to do such a case against the police. But there I am. I thought that I owe it to myself, to the Legal Resources Center, to the memory of my dearest friend in my life, Arthur Chaskelson, who became Chief Justice, to continue. But I am surrounded by very clever, industrious, younger people who put things on the plate for me.
Do you think you ever will retire, George, or do you think one day you'll just fall asleep in that chair?
I don't really know, but I think to myself, if I were to retire, whilst I am capable of serving the people who can't afford lawyers, I'd like to stick out as long as I possibly can.
I think anybody watching this and reading the transcript of this, which will appear in magazines, will see the formulation of George Bizos and what he became. There you were, a 13-year-old child, displaced out of your country, Greece. Tell me the story.
Yes, whose father was sacked from the position of mayor.
So you came from an academic background in some respects, or at least
my father
of
had
education.
passed Standard 4, but I had a refugee teacher in the village school from Asia Minor who was absolutely outstanding in my primary education. And the war was declared on the 28th of October by Italy against Greece. The mathematics master spoke to the assembly to say that the school would close, fearing that the Italians may bombard Kalamata, the town that I was in southwestern Greece. But the mathematics teacher had to report for duty because he was an officer in the artillery. And he made a speech. I'll never forget his words. Very brief. I'm in a hurry. I must go to the military headquarters to report. You are young. Your school is going to close. This is going to be a long war. It may not finish until you are young men and no longer children at school. But we owe it to ourselves, the country and the world, that our dignity should be respected. However difficult your circumstances may be during this war, didn't anticipate that we would be occupied by the Germans 6 months later. But said, hold your heads high and don't succumb to dictators. Even going further back, the province that I come from was next to Sparta. The Spartans were learning how to fight. They needed to have slaves or something just above a slave to grow food for them. But in primary school you taught this history and said, what? That we were slaves of the Spartans, of the militarists? These things influenced me. And my father didn't leave alone. My father left. You see in the book the 7 New Zealand soldiers that were in hiding in our village, and my father took responsibility to evacuate them from Nazi-occupied Greece to go to Crete. We didn't get to Crete because it was busy falling to the Germans. We were picked up by the British Navy, taken to Alexandria. Rommel and his Italian allies were 50 miles outside Cairo. People with children were evacuated from Egypt. My father chose South Africa because he heard that you could pick up diamonds and gold on the pavements of South Africa.
The biggest myth that ever existed.
Yeah. Yes, well, and when I came on that ship there, the Ile-de-France, with 145 Greek refugees, some Allied soldiers who became ill in the desert, and 1,500 Italian prisoners down below who were brought to South Africa.
You left your mother and your sisters and cousins?
My sister and 2 brothers, my grandparents
back in
behind.
Greece.
Because we thought that we would go to Crete. And my father considered it important to save the lives of the 7 New Zealanders. And I don't know what his plans were, whether to stay in Crete and for how long. And there were rumors in the village that we actually drowned. But only in 43, 2.5 years later, did my mother get a Red Cross letter that we were okay. You couldn't say where you were or anything, just about not more than 50 words. And the Red Cross actually tried to get across the borders of war.
You've achieved much of what you wanted to achieve in your life. What is it you haven't achieved?
that the dream that Nelson Mandela, my fellow students at Wits in the late 40s and early 50s, have not come into being. There's still poverty, there's lack of proper education, there is no proper care, the disparity between the very rich and the very poor is great in South Africa. And these are things which I don't regard them as personal failures, but they are failures because what Nelson Mandela, many others, and I fought for many years have not been achieved.